So today we have with us an interesting guest, all the way from San Francisco, the United States. I would like to welcome Mr. Manchi Colah, whose father, late Mr. Sorabji Colah, was one of the 11 members of the Indian cricket team that made the historic Test debut at Lord's on June 25th, 1932. Known as a stroke player and an agile fielder, late Colah played 2 tests for India and also played for the Western India, Nawanagar and the Parsees in the domestic cricket, including the quadrangular and Bombay pentangular. Today, we'd like to know more about the pioneering Indian cricketer from his Stanford University educated son, Mr. Manchi Colah, who for a long time worked in the Silicon Valley. So my first question about your father today is, if you can tell us about his family, his parents, and how did he become a cricketer? Yes, sir.
Well, his parents were, his father was a manager of textile mills in Bombay. And he came from a reasonably well-to-do Parsee family. And he took up cricket in school, St. Xavier's High School in Bombay. And he played for the school team in what was then the Harris Shield cricket tournament. And he took to it very fast. And in 1922, I believe, he was selected to play for the Parsees at a pretty young age. He was 20 at the time. So that's how he started.
So what we heard about him, that he had a prodigious talent, and it created quite a sensation in Mumbai cricket at a very early age. And so what was his first big performance before the 1932 tour? And also, if you can let us know who was his inspiration at that time when he was, becoming a cricketer, and he pursued cricket quite seriously.
His cricket mentor was a man called Melli Pavri, Dr. M. Pavri, who actually toured, who was a very good cricketer, and he toured England with an Indian team in something like 1911 or 12, I'm not sure. And he was a very, very good fast bowler, as well as a very good batsman. And that was his teacher or mentor.
And what was his best performance before he was selected for the 1932 tour?
I don't recall what the details of. He did consistently well. In 1926, Arthur Gilligan brought an English team to India, and he played against them together with Nazir Ali and Wazir Ali and Naidu and all those guys. And he did quite well. He made 65 or 70 against them. And then in 1928, playing for the Parsees against the Hindus, he made 98, a very good 98 against a very strong Hindu team with Ramji, and Dulip Singh Ji also played in that. LP Jai was there. And that was, I think, one of his outstanding innings. Unfortunately, he always got a bit impatient and nervous when he approached 100. So he had a lot of 95s, 96, 97s, and so on. He just didn't have the patience to see it through, but he got close.
Okay, that's interesting. And of course, like as we know that he was chosen for the 1932 tour, and the team they had their camp, preparatory camp in Patiala and also in
Yes.
Shell. So if
Yeah.
you could talk about anything about those camps before the tour.
Well, he did well in the trial matches. I think he made 60 or 70 runs against against Amar Singh, Ramji, Jahangir Khan, very good bowlers. As you know, the 1932 team had a fantastic bowling contingent of the names I've just mentioned. But unfortunately, due to politics, they did not select people like Devdar and LP Jai, who would have been a fantastic, addition to their batting. I mean, they only had, 3 or 4 good, batsmen. And so they were kind of deficient in that. Of course, Dulip Singh Ji and Pataudi Senior did not play for them either. That would have been a fantastic addition. They would surely have beaten the English if those guys had played.
And of course, like as Bobby Talir Khan, he had written a lot of great things about your father, and he wrote that SMH Colah played cricket because he liked the game. And
Yes.
so if you can tell us about some of his memorable or interesting experiences during the 1932 tour in England.
I don't remember him talking too much about his experiences, except that they were very, very well treated. And they had the English public really got their first glimpse of Indian cricket. And of course, they remembered Ranji, but this tour really put Indian cricket in their focus, and they really appreciated it.
Okay, and of course, talking about that historic match, he was part of that historic 11, and on 25th of June 1932, the Indian 11, including your dad, they stepped onto the grass of Lords, and then the rest, as they say, is history. So Mr. Colah, late Mr. Colah, he scored 22 in the first innings. He started quite well, but after that he couldn't sustain, and then he was dismissed by Bill Vos, who was, of course, like he earned more fame and notoriety after that test. I mean, later in the year when he went to Australia to play that historic, infamous rather, Bodyline series. So did
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What was that?
Yeah, I was talking about your father. He scored 22 in the first innings of
Yes.
the
Yes.
1932 test. Before he was
Yes.
dismissed by Bill Vos, the English first bowler, Bill Vos, who earned notoriety and he became quite infamous during that Bodyline tour later that year in Australia. So
Yes.
your father started off quite well. So did he ever talk about that test and write anything about that experience of playing that historic test in England?
Well, at that time there was that other very fast bowler, Harold Larwood, who was the spearhead of the bodyline tactics. And he told me that he was so glad that Larwood wasn't playing in that test in 1932 because all the Indian batsmen were deadly scared of Larwood. He was much faster than Bose, and he was deadly. I mean, in those days they didn't wear any helmets or protection, so if you got hit, you were really done for.
Yeah, that's very true. And in that match, as I mentioned earlier about your father, he was a great fielder and one of those pioneering fielders of Indian cricket. So in that match, he took 2 catches, and so how did he hone his skills in fielding? Like, why? How did he become a great fielder? Like, is
You
there?
know what he would do? he recognized the importance of fielding almost alone amongst all the cricket people at that time. So at the Parsee Gymkhana, he would exercise his fielding by having the Malis, the groundsmen, hit him balls all over the field. And he would run and retrieve them and throw them in to the wicketkeeper. And the Malis were very, very thrilled to have a Parsee Sahib field their hits all over the grounds.
Wow, that's
But it paid off because amongst the Indian fielders, Indian team, he and Lal Singh were the best fielders that were present at that time.
Yeah, that's quite interesting anecdote you shared. And my next question is about, like, that tour. He, of course, he made 1,069 runs. One of the few Indian batsmen who actually, went past 1,000 run mark in that tour. And then in first class matches, he scored, I think, 900. His cumulative score was 900. There are some miscellaneous games also. But quite as you mentioned, like there's a lot of the team wasn't united, and there is a saying that during the tour he did not have a good relationship with the captain of that historic first test, CK Naidu, and it is recorded that on the way back, a lot of people have written about it, that late Mr. Colah threatened to throw Naidu overboard. So is that true, or anything you can talk about that incident?
I don't recall him actually saying that, but I do know that he and Amar Singh absolutely detested Naidu. And because Naidu was a rather mean and nasty fellow who tried to, get as much glory as he could to the detriment of the other players.
Okay. And of course, so whatever little we know about it, who was his best friend and roommate during that 1932 England tour?
That I don't recall.
But Amar Singh was a great friend, as you mentioned.
Oh yes, he was a very, very good friend, and and also his brother Ramji. Ramji didn't make the test, didn't make that test selection, but because he was a little past his prime by that time. Besides, they didn't need another fast bowler. They had Nisar and they had Amar Singh, and that was enough.
Yeah.
Amar Singh did fantastically well. He took 120 wickets, I believe, in first class cricket. And that was a record until I think Vinu Mankad surpassed it eventually, but anyway.
Oh, that's true. And of course, he was the most impactful bowler in that tour, along with Nisar. He played that historic test in Lords in 1932, and the other test which he played in his entire two-test career in international cricket was in Mumbai, the Bombay Test of 1933. That was another history because Indian team played for the first time on their home soil. So, so what was this experience of playing on the home soil, if you can talk about?
Well, I think that in that, what I remember is that in that match, he injured his knee very badly by stepping into a hole near the outskirts of the pitch of the grounds, which was made by a tent pole. So in the second innings, he had, I believe he had to have a runner to help him, and he tried to hang on, and he was the last one out, having made 32 or 33. But the other batsmen didn't, they all kind of succumbed to the English bowling. I think Vijay Merchant played in that game too.
Yeah, and Lala Amarnath, of course, scored the historic century.
And that was the game. That was the game in which Amarnath made his 100 runs, the first time that first time in Indian Test cricket.
Yes, and of that era, another interesting thing, as we talked about controversy, was was the continuous battle between two royalties, two royal family members. One was the Maharaja of Patiala, one of the biggest promoter of the game, and the second one, another patron of the game, that was VZ. So these two players, I mean, either the players, like those days, the saying was like, either you are on the Patiala side or the VZ side. So which side did your father choose at that time?
Well, he was definitely not on the Vizianagaram side. He was with the Patiala.
Okay, that's interesting.
Patiala people, yeah. Because Vizi was a very bad, he was no cricketer. He didn't have any talent. And he was very political and kind of, nasty.
Yeah.
And in 1936, he was invited to come for the trials. But at that time, my mother was having a lot of difficulty with her pregnancy, namely myself. And so luckily he didn't go, because it turned out to be a disaster, as you probably know.
Yeah, very true, very true. 1936, actually, that had the showdown, and Lala Amarnath was sent back to India. So that was the tour. So as you mentioned, like in 1936, he was selected, but he couldn't make it. And that's why, I mean, his test career remained within those two tests, the first one, 1932 and 1933. So with growing age, and when he played the 1932 test, I believe he was one of the senior most players because he was 30 plus at that time. I mean, the other side of 30. And with growing age, of course, he couldn't sustain his test career and the internal politics. So how did he deal with that those days, like the late 30s, when he didn't play any test cricket? So yeah.
No, he joined Navanagar, Jamnagar in 1934, and he played Ranjit Trophy for them, for Navanagar, until 43, I believe, until 43. And he did quite well. I still have a cricket ball as a little trophy that was given to him when he scored 100 somewhere.
And I think he won the Ranji Trophy also with the Nawanagar team. So that was another high in his career.
Yes.
And after his, what prompted him to retire? Of course, the growing age, but was there any other reason which prompted him to retire from first class cricket as well?
Well, in 1943, by 1943, he decided that our family should return to Bombay so that I could go to St. Xavier's High School, which, was an excellent and still is an excellent school, which he had attended, incidentally. He and all his brothers and most of our family went to St. Xavier's High School. So that's why we returned to Bombay. And then after that, he just played kind of weekend small matches.
And
Apart from an occasional foray to other places to play for teams that invited him.
okay, that's interesting. And in fact, as you mentioned about St. Xavier's, so I think because there were quite a few other cricketers from St. Xavier's.
Yes,
Yeah, so including Sunil Gavaskar. So,
yes,
but
yes.
I believe your father was the first Xaverian to play for India in Test cricket. Uh,
I believe you're right. Yes.
and
Yeah, I believe you're right.
So my next question is, so what did he do after his retirement from all kinds of cricket?
Well, he worked for the ACC, which used to be the Associated Cement Corporation, and he worked for them until his death in 1950.
So yeah, of course, he died quite early. So what are the main reasons behind his early demise?
Well, for one thing, he smoked a lot. He smoked nearly 20 packs a day, and the trouble was that they weren't even good cigarettes. He would smoke these dreadful Charminar cigarettes, which nobody would accept. So he carried around another package of good cigarettes to offer people.
Okay, that's quite
So
interesting.
that was one very bad thing for his health. And the other was that he would drink gallons and gallons of tea all day and not eat very much, and then have a big meal at night, and then, sack off,
Uh,
which isn't very good to do.
True, true. And so, as we know that you spent very little time with him because of his early demise. So, the years you spent with him as a child, so what are the fond memories of him, and also like playing cricket? I mean, learning something from your father. So, if you can talk about
Yeah, he coached me. He coached me at cricket. I had some talent, but not a lot. And he also coached me at tennis. He was a very good tennis player, and I owe him my ability and my fondness for tennis. I found out I was much better at tennis than cricket, and besides, cricket took up an awful lot of time, which I couldn't afford. And they discouraged me from, spending too much time at cricket because it interfered with my studies.
and of course like you concentrated on studies and then you went to England, and after that Stanford University, and then you went to the Silicon Valley. I think you are one of those few Indians, the early Indians at Silicon Valley, if I'm not wrong. So how was that experience?
I liked it. I enjoyed it very much. I worked for a company that is now no more, Ampex Corporation, that made recorders, video and tape recorders. And then I worked for SRI International in Menlo Park, which is kind of a, how do you call it, a think tank of sorts. And I had a very good experience, Silicon Valley.
Okay, and of course, I must thank you for this wonderful discussion. Before I end, I just want to ask you one more question. Is there any, because as far as I know that your uncle was also a cricketer, a decent first-class cricketer, but is there any
Yes.
other family member who played cricket?
No, he and his youngest brother was Naval Colah, and he played for the Parsees, as well as in, I believe, Ranjit Trophy matches. And he was a good left arm bowler and an opening batsman.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot for this wonderful freewheeling discussion. And I really, I'd like to thank you once again.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Most welcome, most welcome.